Hi, Namaste. My name is Henry Jolicoeur. In this video, I would like to share with you one of the most powerful technique for self-realization. In Sanskrit, it's called Vichara, or in English, self-inquiry. This technique was recommended by the great sage, Sri Ramana Maharishi. Now, for those of you that are new to this teaching, let me describe the life of Sri Ramana Maharishi in a nutshell. Sri Ramana was born in 1879 in a small village in South India called Tiruchali. Until the age of 16-year-old, he was just like the other boys and teenagers of his school and neighborhood. He loved to swim and play all kinds of sports. But one day, when he was 16-year-old, he had a powerful experience of awakening. Some scholars say that he died for a few minutes, and when he came back to consciousness, he was completely enlightened. Some other scholars say that what happened to him that day, lying down on the floor of his uncle's house in Madurai, was shedding completely the ego. He ceased to identify himself with the body or the mind. He became self-realized. From then on, he identified himself as the supreme self, beyond body and mind. A few weeks after that experience, he left home and went to live on the sacred mountain of Arunachala. For thousands of years, yogis and sages have lived in the various caves on the mountain, totally dedicated to meditation and various process of self-realization. When Ramana arrived at that sacred mountain, for several years he was completely in samadhi, to the point of neglecting his own body. After several years of such samadhi, the trance of samadhis slowly subside, and by 1910 or so, many people started to come and ask Ramana various questions on how to become self-realized. By the 1930s, 1940s, books in English had been written about him, and thousands of people from all around the world came to ask him questions about self-realization. In 1935, the great yogi Paramahansa Yogananda came to visit Bhagavan. And Yogananda asked this question: what is the best method for self-realization? And Sri Ramana told them that there was not one method only for self-realization. It all depended on the maturity of the person seeking enlightenment, self-realization. Many spiritual-minded devotees from different traditions came and asked him about their own path to self-realization. Some would say, I'm a devotee of Krishna, I do japa, I'm a devotee of Shiva, I'm a devotee of the Divine Mother, I practice Kriya Yoga, bringing the attention to the Ajna Chakra, on and on. And Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharishi never discouraged anyone from following their spiritual path. But at times, some devotees would ask him, what is the best way to self-realization? And Sri Ramana Maharishi always said that vichara, self-inquiry, was the best way to realize the self. Self-inquiry is a deep investigation of one's mind. And by the time of his Mahasamadhi, when he passed away in 1950, he was regarded by yoga scholar as the greatest yogi, self-realized master of the 20th century. His life story and his teaching are now famous all around the world, and they have helped countless devotees around the world on their journey to self-realization. I would like to read some of the praise that Sri Ramana has received over the years from yoga scholar and other spiritual teacher. Ramdas Richard Alpert said, Ramana is a realized spiritual master, free from all material attachment. His teachings are the perfect balance between the heart and the head. Osho said that self-realized master like Ramana Maharishi only appear on this planet one every 1,000 years. His method of self-inquiry, asking oneself, who am I, require immense courage and abandonment of the ego. Yoga scholar Ken Wilber wrote, Ramana's teaching on Advaita and self-inquiry is the direct method to realize the non-dual nature of reality. In my opinion, Sri Ramana Maharishi was the greatest yogi of the 20th century. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, wrote, Ramana Maharishi's greatness is now guiding millions of people toward self-realization. Such master as Ramana light up the path to enlightenment and bring solace to humanity. So what is self-inquiry? It is an investigation of one's own mind and becoming aware of the I. For most people, we identify that I with something material. I am tall, I am fat, I am American, I am Canadian, I am angry, I am in love, on and on and on. In 2010 and 2014, I went to India to interview one of the greatest scholars on the teaching of Ramana Maharishi. His name is David Godman. David discovered Ramana Maharishi sometime in 1976, and the teaching of Bhagavan has totally transformed his life. He has been a devotee now for more than 50 years, and he is still writing books about Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharishi. I think he is the best person to explain what self-inquiry is all about. For this reason, I am including various parts of my interviews in this video.
I am with Mr. David Godman, who discovered Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi in 1974 and moved to Tiruvannamalai in 1976. Since then, he has written 12 books on the subject of Ramana Maharishi and consider Ramana Maharishi his main teacher. What is self-inquiry for you to begin with? Well,
so the basic premise, according to Bhagavan, is that the individual I cannot exist unless it associates or identifies with something else. So you have this feeling or entity of I inside you, and he said it's a corrupted version of the true I, which is the self, and it's corrupted because it's always associating with something. I am a man, I am angry. You have a thought, you have a perception, and somehow the two get conflated together. There's never a pure I, there's always an I am this, I am feeling this, I am thinking this, I remember this. He said the way to get rid of this false I is to sever it from all the things it associates and identifies with. And he said the way to do that is not to put attention on the objects which the I is thinking, remembering, perceiving, but simply to be aware inside yourself of this basic fundamental I. He calls it the I thought. He said it's the basis of everything you know about yourself, everything you think about yourself, everything you do. There's this inner I. And he said if you become aware of it subjectively rather than as an object of your attention, and you constantly be vigilant in order to stop it associating with thoughts, ideas, then this I can't subsist or exist by itself. And once there are no longer any objects that it can latch onto, it has to subside, because it can't exist in isolation. Slowly, slowly it sinks back to the place of its origin, which is the self, and it disappears. he said any technique that puts attention on an object rather than on a subject takes you away from the self, and any technique which consists of inhering in this subjective awareness takes you back to the self. So he said this works and all the others don't, because you're always projecting your attention externally with the other techniques. With this one, you're attacking the fundamental common thread to all your experience and allowing it to dissolve by constant inner awareness of it. So now we get to what Bhagavan says. He said the way to do it is to, he said, whenever you get a thought or an idea in your head, or you see something, you say, who is perceiving this? Who is thinking this? To which automatically the answer has to be I. I am perceiving this. I am thinking this. He said, then ask the question, who am I? As a method of focusing on this inner subjective feeling of I. And basically, that's the beginning and end of his advice. He said, each time you become distracted, each time you become aware that you're no longer wholly absorbed in this inner feeling of I, go back to it again. Who has been distracted? Who is in this new train of thought? Who is now thinking about what he's having for dinner? I. Who am I? And you go back to this inner feeling of I again and again and again. And sooner or later, he says, it will subside and it will disappear. Now, what's complicated about that?
Bhagavan is famous for giving the question, who am I? Why did he do so?
When Bhagavan asked people to say, who am I, to find out the nature of the I, he wasn't giving some abstract intellectual advice. He was passing on the method by which he himself had realized the self at the age of 16. As he was lying on the floor in Madurai, the question arose in him, who is the one that sees? Meaning, who is this thing inside me that sees something outside? And he says, as a direct answer to that question, his individual I went back into the heart and died, and revealed a state in which there was no longer any distinction between the one who saw things and the objects that were seen. So when he said, ask yourself, who am I? He was saying, this is how I got enlightened, try it yourself, and maybe the same thing will happen to you. Now, as a secondary point on this, Bhagavan would occasionally be asked, why does this particular method work, and why is it better than other methods? And for that we need to explain a little Bhagavan's teachings on the nature of the I, how people have wrong identifications, and how those identifications can be erased. So he said the idea that we are an individual person, an I inside a body, is a defective programming, a kind of wrong conditioning that we all suffer from. He said that there is an I inside the body which thinks itself separate from everything outside. There's a world outside, there are people outside, and those are the objects that we perceive through our senses, and those are the things that we think about through our mind. So, for example, when I say I see a tree, I is the subject I, tree is the object I look at. When I say I feel happy, I is subject I, happiness is the object state that I'm absorbed in. He said this dichotomy between a subject who thinks and perceives and an object that is seen or perceived is the root cause of individuation, that the idea that we are a separate self arises simply because of this confused notion that we are a person occupying a body who sees things that are separate from us and thinks about things which are different from us. And he said this particular illusion, this particular wrong idea can be challenged by putting attention onto the I, which thinks thoughts, which remembers memories, which sees objects. He said that this individual I comes into existence and only continues to exist as long as it identifies with things it thinks about and things that it sees. He said there's a continuous process of reinforcement, that I am a person, the idea I am a person arises and continues because of all the objects that the individual I thinks it is or identifies with or associates with. And he said you need to challenge this idea, I am a person, I am a woman, I am a man, I am angry. He said the common thread to all those is the I who thinks, the I who perceives, the I who feels. And what he's saying is that if you can put full attention on this inner sense of I and vigilantly hold focus on that inner sense in such a way that the I is not jumping out to identify or associate with other objects, then that individual I can no longer exist. He said it's always in association with something. It's a thought, it's a memory, it's a perception, and that when you can sever the links between the I who thinks, the I who perceives, and those things it thinks about or perceives, it can no longer survive by itself in isolation. At that point, he said it will slowly start to subside back where it came from, which is the heart, which is the self. So he said initially there'll be feelings of peace, silence, quietness as this I starts to sink back, but this I is conditioned, it's programmed to extrovert all the time. So the moment the I starts to think, immediately a whole bunch of other things will jump up and try and grab hold of it. Bhagavan said self-inquiry is to hold on to this sense of I to the exclusion of all other thoughts, to the point where the mind is no longer interested in extroverting onto other objects, other thoughts. At that moment it starts to subside, it goes back into the heart, at which point you realize that the true I is not the I that thinks I am the body, I am this thing that sees things outside me. You discover the true I inside yourself, which is the universal I, which makes no distinction between what's inside and what's outside. What is Bhagavan's simple, most basic message on how to do self-inquiry? And here it is. Question 9. What is the path of inquiry for understanding the nature of the mind? To which Bhagavan replies, that which rises as I in this body is the mind. If one inquires as to where in the body the thought I rises first, one would discover that it rises in the heart. That is the place of the mind's origin. Even if one thinks constantly I, one will be led to that place. Of all the thoughts that arise in the mind, the I thought is the first. It is only after the rise of this that the other thoughts arise. It is after the appearance of the first personal pronoun I that the second and third personal pronouns appear. Without the first personal pronoun, there will not be the second and third. Then the next question is, how will the mind become quiescent? To which the answer is, from Bhagavan, by the inquiry, who am I? The thought, who am I, will destroy all other thoughts, and like the stick used for stirring the burning pyre, it will itself in the end get destroyed. Then there will arise self-realization. Then this is the crucial question about practice. The question is, what is the means for constantly holding on to the thought, who am I? To which Bhagavan replies, when other thoughts arise, one should not pursue them, but should inquire, to whom do they arise? It does not matter how many thoughts arise. As each thought arises, one should inquire with diligence, to whom has this thought arisen? The answer that would emerge would be, to me. Thereupon, if one inquires, who am I? The mind will go back to its source, and the thought that arose will become quiescent. With repeated practice in this manner, the mind will develop the skill to stay in its source. So those are Bhagavan's instructions on what you have to do. Now that's not the end of the story. This is a two-way transaction. What Bhagavan is saying is, if you can make your eye go back to its source and abide there, then you invoke the power of the Guru, the power of the self, and ultimately it's this power which is going to suck your quiescent I thought into its source and destroy it. What Bhagavan is saying you have to do is, through repeated practice, take your sense of I back to its source and hold it there in such a way that nothing distracts it, nothing makes it want to go out and follow a thought. If you reach this state of effortless, thought-free I sense, then this I will be abiding at its source, but this is not liberation. This is simply the I offering itself up in a way as a sacrifice to the self. When this I no longer has any impetus to move out, when there's no momentum to chase a thought, then the power of the self will reveal itself to that I thought, it will suck it into itself, it will destroy it, and liberation will result. Your job is to take the I back to its source and hold it there. The power of the self acting through the Guru, its job is to take hold of that I and destroy it once you've done that initial process.
People that are new to this path may be interested, what does it help me? What benefits would come with self-inquiry if I really go into this?
Bhagavan always insisted that inquiry was for the dissolution of the sense of the individual self, but he did also admit that if you took up the practice, good things would happen to you. You get peaceful, you get quiet. He even said it was the best medicine. He said if you did self-inquiry regularly, it was a good way of keeping the body healthy. That said, self-inquiry is a win-win practice. Either you get enlightened or you just get peaceful and happy. Now, there's no downside to self-inquiry. If you follow a yogic path, if you try and do Kundalini yoga, then you might end up, if you have that kind of predisposition, getting into various psychotic states. There are practices which are somewhat dangerous. I haven't ever come across a single person who has started doing self-inquiry who has ever suffered from any adverse effects whatsoever. Those who have pursued it all say that although it's hard work, it's boring at times, it's improved their mental stability, it's increased the amount of time that they spend in peaceful, happy states. What else do you want from life? You can be very extreme, you can strive for liberation, or you can simply do it to keep your mind clean and tidy and live a happy, peaceful, well-adjusted life with your family and doing your job.
David Gottman gave a clear and complete explanation of what is self-inquiry, but how to apply this wisdom in our daily life. Various psychological studies, including one by the Stanford University, have shown that we have between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts every day. Are we to analyze every thought, asking who is having that thought? It's an impossible task unless you are a monk, a yogi, living in a cave somewhere. I really like the recommendation of Arthur Osborne in his book, Ramana Maharishi and the Path of Self-Knowledge. Arthur Osborne and his wife, Lucia, lived in the Sri Ramana ashram from 1945 to 1970. For 5 years, Arthur Osborne and his wife had a direct relationship with Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharishi. He described in his book how he and his wife, Lucia, had many spiritual experiences in the presence of Ramana Maharishi. In this book, Arthur Osborne recommends the following. He said that we should sit down in meditation, bring the attention to the heart center, the right side of the heart, and then bring the question, who am I, in that meditation. So as the thoughts come in and out of consciousness, one may ask, who is having that thought? For me, as many other that are neophyte in the process of self-realization, it makes sense to take some time every day to sit down and give some time to meditate on the question, who am I? Ramana Maharishi has made it clear that anyone from any religion can use the technique of self-inquiry, no matter if you're Christian, Hindu, Muslim, Jew. You can incorporate the process of self-inquiry in your meditation time, in your prayer time. And for all of us that have been initiated in various types of meditation, be Kriya Yoga, Siddha Yoga, Raja Yoga, the technique of self-inquiry can be incorporated in those meditations. As an example, in the 1980s, I was initiated in a Buddhist path and took refuge in a Buddhist ceremony under the care of Kalu Rinpoche. And for many, many years now, I have been using a meditation called Metta, which is a meditation to develop a heart of loving kindness, of gratitude, of compassion. It's something that I practice every day. And I have introduced self-inquiry as part of that meditation. I don't see any problem in practicing meditation to develop virtues like gratitude, compassion, loving kindness, and at the same time practicing self-inquiry. There is possibly millions of people that practice meditation where you bring your attention to the Ajna chakra, like Kriya Yoga, as taught by Paramahamsa Yogananda, a technique that I learned when I was a teenager. There's many other spiritual paths that focus on the Ajna chakra, like the Siddha Yoga, as taught by Swami Muktananda, or the Sant Mat religion, as taught by Baba Sowan Singh, and then his disciple, Kirpal Singh. So whatever spiritual path you are now following, whatever type of meditation you are practicing, you can include the process of self-inquiry in your practice. I am always happy wherever I go around the world to see people sit down every day to meditate, no matter the traditions that they follow. The most important to my heart is that people make an effort to realize their divine self. And I would like to end this presentation with a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 40. In this endeavor for self-realization, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on the path of self-realization can protect you from the most dangerous type of fear. We have seen in history all the wars because someone identified themselves as French, English, Russian, Ukrainian, Japanese, Italian, Greek, and so on. Or the war of religion, Jewish, Palestinian, Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, Christians. So much suffering came by not identifying oneself with the divine self, which is the same in all human beings. If you are new to the process of self-inquiry or meditation, let me guide you in a short meditation. Bring your attention to your heart area. At the beginning, it is recommended by me to put your hand on your heart area. Imagine that you are breathing in and you are breathing out from your heart area. Breathing in and breathing out. And you remind yourself that you are doing this meditation because you love yourself, because you care about yourself, because you want the very best in life for yourself. Peace, love, tranquility. Close your eyes now and keep your attention on your heart and notice your thoughts coming in and going out of your consciousness. Let's introduce these words in your consciousness. Who am I? Who am I? Who is the one thinking all those thoughts? And keep observing your thinking process. You can put your hand down and keep your focus on your heart area. For 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, whatever time you have available for such meditation. Thank you very much. Namaste.